Hello there. Welcome to Whiskey Lore. I am Drew Hanish. It is time for a whiskey tasting, and we did Jack Daniel's 10 the other day. We're going to do the Jack Daniel's 12 today. 12 years. So we're talking 8 years in the upper parts of the warehouse, getting some intense heat and really trying to build a muscly, meaty whiskey, and then an additional 4 years in a lower part of the distillery where it has an opportunity to kind of rest and not turn into an oak bomb, basically. And this is interesting because I had a chance to talk with Chris Fletcher, and I wanted to know what the strategy was at Jack Daniel, because I know that they have interest in doing a 14-year, an 18-year, and a 21-year-old whiskey, because those are whiskeys that had been done in the past with the probably while Jack was still alive. And the thing is that there's a certain point where you get diminishing returns. If you are going to be baking that barrel at the top of the warehouse, one of two things is going to happen. Either it's going to become an oak bomb, or it's going to disappear. I mean, if you try to do 21 years at the top of a brick house, you can forget it. There's probably not going to be anything left in that barrel by the time you pull it out. So there's this decision of, when do we pull the barrel down? And so I was curious to find out if they were working on some strategies, say 6 years upstairs for the 21-year-old, and then bring it down and let it age in a cooler place for the remainder of the years to get it to whatever its age needs to be. I mean, because in Scotland, sometimes what they'll do is say a whiskey gets to 45 years old, and they're really in danger of it just really turning into something they don't want. They will find a 4 times used cask that's just worn out, and they'll dump it in there. Technically, it's aging, but they're really protecting the whiskey from going bad so that they can reach, or disappearing, so that they can reach that 50-year-old age. And so it's kind of the hidden dirty secret of Scotch whiskey, that 50-year-old whiskey may not truly have gone through a full maturation in that. I mean, that it took a break. Definitely put the brakes on. Still maturing, but at such a slow rate. And so he said that basically, yes, they are experimenting, and they're going to see what they can do with this. It's all still a fairly new thing. What's interesting is that, if you don't know, Chris Fletcher, their current master distiller, is the grandson of Frank Bobo, the legendary distiller at Jack Daniel, who was there in the mid to late 50s, and that was the time period where everything just exploded. And so I asked him, I said, did your grandfather ever taste a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old Jack Daniel? Because it was always on allocation. And he said, that's the easiest question I'm answering today. No. He said they may have had a special project or something that got set to the side, but it was so, the demand was so high, they really needed to sell everything that they had coming in, or that they were producing. And they had this, that they had a mission that they didn't really want to cheapen the whiskey, so they weren't trying to ship it out when it's too young. So it had to go through its full maturation before they would ship it out. And so people would complain, and they would just say, hey, we're going to hold on to it till it's good. And Chris had a funny line. His grandfather said that he didn't want to have to mix anything with his whiskey to make it good. In other words, didn't want to have to make a cocktail, didn't want to have to, water it down, do something, whatever it was, he wanted his whiskey to be good without having to do a lot of tampering with it. So, a little bit of history there to go through and get your anticipation built up over this idea of drinking a 12-year-old version of Jack Daniel for the first time. And so this is going to be the same as the 10-year, in that there's about a 300 barrel lot that they use to batch and come up with this whiskey. And I can tell you right off the bat, this is very different from the 10-year-old. Very different. Again, barrels likely coming from a different warehouse, treated differently. When you think about a warehouse, also you have to think about the fact that if you're drinking a 10-year-old whiskey, and let's say you had 3 dry summers during that time period, but maybe down the road, the next 10 year that comes through had 5 dry summers. You know, those types of things are going to create what we'd almost call vintages of whiskey. So the idea that this year's 10-year-old tastes different than the one from 2 years ago makes sense. And we're probably going to find the same thing going on with the 12-year-old. If you like the 12-year-old now, it may be a little different the next time you get it. All depends on how they're treating the casks, the kind of weather that those barrels are going through. All of that stuff is going to make a big difference. One of the things Chris said on the nose, he said there's a lot of confectionery notes in this. And one of the notes he brought out was sorghum. And sorghum is interesting because I actually have a bottle of distilled sorghum. And it's sort of like rum, but it's not. It is a technically a grain. I'm going to do a video on it actually and dive a little bit more in and do a tasting on it. It comes from Nashville Craft, and it's a really interesting spirit. And in fact, I may end up dedicating a whole week to doing some off-base spirits instead of doing whiskey. You know, I haven't done that before, so maybe it's time for me to jump in and do something like that. But after having nosed that and then nosing this, it's like he said it connected. Yes, it does it has rum characteristics to it, but it is a different smell. It is a unique smell. Then you get the Jack Daniel's notes, but you also get butterscotch in here a lot more. What's interesting is the leather notes and the tobacco notes. I mean, they're there, but they are so light. So the 10-year-old actually smells older to me than this whiskey does. There's a little light oak and a little char comes through. Cheers. Very sweet on the palate at first, but then it goes to cloves, cinnamon stick, red hot cinnamon too, peppery note coming through on the palate. Ooh, nice heat on the back. Now this is a higher ABV than the other. This is actually 107 proof, which is, I'm not doing my math, 53.5% ABV. Still not barrel proof. These are coming in at a higher proof. He wasn't sure exactly what proof, but he is taking these down to that 107 range. Nice, easy drinking, actually, even at that higher proof. But I will say that this one, I felt like I needed to add a little bit of water to it just to see what the heck happened with it. And what's interesting is on the end, on the finish on this, I get a very earthy kind of a flavor coming through. Oh man, that brought the oak spice out big time. I mean, oh yeah. Almost an herbally oak, if that's such a thing, if that makes sense. Really interesting note. It's something that, and there's a little cola note coming through there too. And what's really interesting about it is that it has that Jack Daniel's stamp on it, but it is very different in how that is placed within the picture. I don't really get the banana note so much here. It's there, it's underneath with a little caramel also probably in there as well, but it's less defined here than it is in the 10-year-old. Gotta do a second tasting. Mm. Now that I'm looking for the banana note, yeah. Oh, it's there. Like, again, the banana chips thing, and it's really, I think, a little bit stronger. Oh, and then a nice cocoa on the finish. Wow. I am shocked actually at how many different flavors I'm pulling out of this. When we get to older whiskeys, I always anticipate more subtle. And everything here is jumping off the palate. And it's not chaos. Everything seems to fit in its own spot. But now on the finish, I took a bigger mouthful of it this time, a little water in it, and I am getting just this almost like a sundae when you get the chocolate drizzled over a banana. Man, that's really nice. And the earthiness is less. Now I'm not getting the earthiness as much as I'm getting that banana. Oh, wow. I love sundaes, so yeah, no, this is hitting me just right. Really, really wonderful whiskey. So now this is going to cost you about $80 a bottle if you can find it, and hopefully you'll be able to find it. Both of these whiskeys are due to be released in April. Don't have an exact date that they're coming out, but they will be hitting shelves in April. If it were me, and it's interesting because when I walked away after doing the tasting with Chris, I would have told you get the 10. But honestly, I have fallen in love with that finish. That finish is amazing, and it does not go away. It is still, I mean, I feel like I just took a trip to Dairy Queen. It is really, really, really nice. Amazing. All right. So enough of that. I love when something hits me and I don't expect it to, and it just all of a sudden, wow. Okay, add a little water to that because it's going to do well. Coming up on Monday, I am going to do my little review of these two books and tell you, what to expect and which one you might want to go look for. There's newer copies of this. In fact, Fawn Weaver from Uncle Nearest did a foreword on a much prettier version of this, but it was fun. I was recently at the Moore County Archives, and as I was looking through the old deed books, they had a copy, the exact same copy there, so kind of fun getting something like that. Nice little historic artifact. Hope you enjoyed this. Give me a subscription. Click there, ring the bell if you want to know when I put out videos. I usually put them out daily through the week. And then give me a like if you enjoyed the episode. And comments below. Feel free to leave me comments and ask me anything. Maybe a whiskey you want me to review or something like that. And until next time, I love this. Actually, it's that moment when you know it's about to hit your palate again. Cheers and Slainte. They're doing exceptional things at Jack Daniels.